On December 14th, 2019, Emperor Palpatine announced his return from the dead. Not in a movie theater, not on Disney+, in Fortnite. Ian McDiarmid's voice echoed across millions of screens as players parachuted onto an island to shoot each other with cartoon guns. At last, the work of generations is complete. The great error is corrected. The day of victory is at hand. The day of revenge. The day of the Sith. Picture it. A 12-year-old in Oklahoma drops into Tilted Towers, builds a wall, gets sniped, and somewhere in the background, the resurrection of the Sith is being announced to the galaxy. That's where it happened. That's where the canonical broadcast occurred. That message? It's official. Ray Carson's novelization of The Rise of Skywalker, published in March 2020, incorporated those exact words. Marvel's Darth Vader comic issue 11 in 2021 depicted the broadcast visually within the Star Wars universe itself. The Lucasfilm Story Group, the team specifically created to ensure unified storytelling across all media, coordinated with Epic Games before they coordinated with the film's own opening crawl. Which brings us to a question that will either scratch your inner archivist or make you throw something at your screen. Is Fortnite technically more canonical than the Yuuzhan Vong invasion? The answer is messier than you think, and understanding why makes you smarter than people who just yell, "Disney bad," or "Legends doesn't count." Let's start with what most people get wrong about the Vong. I've seen the videos, the comments, the corrections that pile up underneath. Someone explains that the Yuuzhan Vong were cut off from the Force, or evolved outside it, and immediately 36 replies appear pointing out that's not quite right, because it isn't. The Yuuzhan Vong weren't born disconnected. They were severed. Their origin story spans galaxies, literally. The species evolved in a distant galaxy in biological symbiosis with their living homeworld, Yuuzhan Tar. That bond connected them to the Force the same way it connects every other sentient species. They felt it, used it, were part of it. Imagine an entire civilization whose connection to something larger than themselves ran through the ground beneath their feet, through every plant and creature sharing their world. Then came the Kremlevian War, galaxy-spanning devastation. Yuuzhan Tar didn't just suffer, it died. And when a living planet that served as your entire species' force conduit dies, something breaks inside you. The Yuuzhan Vong weren't cut off, they were ripped out. The new Jedi Order series establishes that this severance caused continuous, profound agony across the entire species. Not metaphorical pain, actual, unending torment that never faded across millennia. Their culture of pain worship, the body modifications, the rejection of mechanical technology, all of it traces back to that foundational trauma. They didn't evolve outside the Force, they were wounded out of it. And they built a civilization around that wound. But here's the thing about wounds. Sometimes they can heal. Yuuzhan Tar produced a seed before its death. That seed eventually grew into Zonama Sikat, a mobile planet that Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order encountered in the unknown regions during the invasion. Zonama Sikat carried the legacy of the Yuuzhan Vong homeworld, the potential for reconnection that the species had lost millennia earlier. The resolution of the entire 19-novel series hinged on this living planet and what it represented. Here's what most explainers miss entirely. One Yuuzhan Vong proved the connection could be restored. His name was Onimi, and his story is stranger than most fans realize even after 19 novels. Born into the Shaper caste, their scientists and bioengineers, Onimi conducted a forbidden experiment. He grafted Yamosk tissue onto his own brain. Yamosks were telepathic creatures the Vong used as war coordinators, massive beings that could link their living ships and armies into synchronized wholes across entire battle theaters. The procedure failed by every measurable standard, left him physically deformed, twisted in ways that marked him permanently. He was condemned as a shamed one, the lowest caste in Yuuzhan Vong society, stripped of status and treated as less than nothing. But the failed grafting did something nobody expected. It restored his Force connection. Onimi spent years presenting himself as a capering jester, tolerated in the court of Supreme Overlord Shimra Jamane. Everyone dismissed him. Everyone underestimated him. He played the fool so convincingly that the most powerful beings in the invasion fleet looked right through him. And that was the point, because Onimi used his reawakened force abilities to control Shimra entirely. The towering supreme overlord, the terror who commanded fleets of living ships? A puppet, a vessel. The true power behind the entire Yuuzhan Vong invasion was the disfigured fool nobody took seriously. Onimi served as the main antagonist of the entire New Jedi Order series. His existence proved something essential. The Vong weren't a fundamentally different species incompatible with the Force. They were wounded. The connection could be restored. Even if his particular method wasn't exactly replicable, it demonstrated that the severance was trauma, not biology. Now here's a detail I rarely see mentioned. A comment dropped it on a competitor's video, and it deserved way more attention than it got. Canderous Ordo, Knights of the Old Republic, 2003. If you exhausted his conversation tree aboard the Ebon Hawk, and you had to work for it, cycling through war stories about campaigns against the Republic first, the Mandalorian mercenary tells you about an encounter in the unknown regions. His patrol discovered what appeared to be an asteroid drifting through uncharted space. Except the asteroid moved against gravitational currents, behaved wrong. When the Mandalorians moved closer to investigate, their instruments couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. Then it revealed itself. A vessel of living material engaged them in combat. Canderous describes the ship as organic, grown rather than built, using weapons his warriors had never encountered in any of their campaigns. His patrol destroyed it. Mandalorians don't retreat, but the encounter left him unsettled in ways other battles hadn't. This wasn't just an enemy, it was something that shouldn't exist. Sound familiar? The description aligns remarkably well with Yorick Strongha, the Yuuzhan Vong reconnaissance vessels grown to resemble asteroids for scouting purposes. Organic construction, asteroid disguise, unfamiliar biotechnology weapons. But this creates a massive timeline problem. KOTOR is set approximately 4,000 years before the events of the films. If Mandalorians encountered Vong scouts that early, why did the actual invasion take millennia to materialize? What were they doing all that time? Watching? Waiting? The Legends material never fully reconciled this. No BioWare developer ever publicly confirmed this was an intentional Yuuzhan Vong Easter egg. The connection remains compelling, but officially unverified. A piece of lore archaeology that rewards close reading without giving you a definitive answer. If someone in comments knows more about the BioWare design process here, I'm genuinely curious. So why does a 19-novel storyline with this much depth just not exist anymore? October 30th, 2012. Disney announced its acquisition of Lucasfilm for $4.05 billion. Episode 7 was targeted for 2015. The problem was immediate and substantial. The post-Return of the Jedi timeline wasn't empty. Luke had married Mara Jade, the former Emperor's Hand turned Jedi. Han and Leia had 3 children, twins Jason and Jaina, and younger son Anakin. The New Jedi Order series, published between 1999 and 2003, had reshaped everything. Coordinated across multiple authors under Del Rey Books' editorial direction, it told a story of invasion, sacrifice, and transformation spanning 19 novels. Chewbacca died on Cernpadal. The Yuuzhan Vong pulled a moon into collision with the planet, and he couldn't escape in time. Han's co-pilot, his best friend, killed by enemies who used gravity itself as a weapon. Anakin Solo, Han and Leia's youngest, died during a mission into enemy territory, a sacrifice that saved his strike team but broke something in his older brother. Jason Solo eventually fell to the dark side and became Darth Caedus, a Sith Lord who had to be stopped by his twin sister Jaina in a final confrontation. This wasn't backstory. This was decades of carefully constructed storytelling that fans had followed, argued about, and loved. Disney couldn't work around it. The story they wanted to tell required a clean slate. So on April 25th, 2014, Lucasfilm issued the announcement that changed everything. The existing expanded universe would be rebranded as Legends, a separate continuity. The new official canon would consist of the 6 films, Clone Wars, and everything produced under the Lucasfilm story group going forward. Christie Golden's novel Sword of the Jedi, announced as the start of a trilogy continuing Jaina Solo's story after her brother's fall, cancelled. The 1313 video game that had generated substantial fan anticipation, shelved. Ongoing comic series concluded or shifted direction. Authors who had spent years developing characters watched their work designated as officially non-canonical. The promise was explicit. No more tears, no more contradictions. One unified continuity, overseen by professionals whose entire job was maintaining consistency. And the promise started failing almost immediately. The Star Wars Canon comic series, published beginning in 2015, depicted Caleb Doom's survival of Order 66 in specific detail. His master Depa Billab's death, his subsequent escape into the galaxy. In 2021, the animated series The Bad Batch revisited those same events. Both produced under story group oversight, both considered official canon. The details don't align. The sequence differs. The beats land differently. Novelizations of the sequel trilogy contain scenes and motivations that contradict their films. Jason Fry's Last Jedi novelization includes internal monologue that casts character decisions in entirely different lights than what you see on screen. Ray Carson's Rise of Skywalker novelization attempts to address plot points the movie leaves dangling. Expanded context for Palpatine's return, Rey's heritage, the mechanics of Force dyads. But whether those novelization additions constitute official canonical clarification or authorial interpretation, nobody has said. The boundary remains undefined. And then there's the holiday special. That 1978 production featuring B. Arthur as a cantina entertainer and extended sequences of untranslated Wookiee dialogue exists in a bureaucratic void that the one canon system was supposed to eliminate. It's absent from Disney+, even from the vintage collection of classic Star Wars content. It's excluded from the official StarWars.com timeline. But Lucasfilm has never actually issued a statement regarding its canonical status. It just floats, unaddressed. The system designed to resolve ambiguity has created a new one by refusing to acknowledge the question exists. Here's what both camps get wrong. The Disney ruined everything crowd forgets that the old system was never stable. Lucasfilm hired Leland Chee in 2000 to maintain the Holocron, an internal database tracking every character, location, event, and piece of technology across the franchise. He managed a 5-tier hierarchy that looked logical on paper. G-Canon for George Lucas's direct work at the top, T-Canon for television below that, C-Canon for the bulk of expanded universe content, S-Canon for older material predating systematic tracking, N-Canon for explicitly non-canonical stories like the Infinities comics. The problem? George Lucas didn't read any of it. As Chee acknowledged in a 2018 interview, what we were doing in the books really wasn't on his radar. Lucas viewed the films as his story and licensed products as someone else's problem entirely. Attack of the Clones revealed Boba Fett as a clone of Jango Fett, contradicting backstory multiple novels had carefully established. The Clone Wars animated series turned Mandalorians from warrior culture into a pacifist society, negating decades of world building that authors had painstakingly constructed. The tier system existed to manage contradictions. Its highest tier was controlled by someone who didn't consider himself bound by any tier below it. The Legends doesn't count crowd ignores something equally obvious. Lucasfilm keeps pulling from it. Grand Admiral Thrawn, introduced by Timothy Zahn in Heir to the Empire in 1991, returned in Rebels Season 3 in 2016. He's since appeared in The Mandalorian and Ahsoka with his core characteristics largely intact. The blue skin, the red eyes, the art-based analytical methodology, the measured menace, the positioning at the Empire's edge near the unknown regions. Dathomir's Night Sisters crossed over. The Inquisitors hunting Jedi echo Legends concepts. Starship designs, force techniques, planetary names, keep migrating from one continuity to another without any systematic pattern anyone outside Lucasfilm can identify. But Mara Jade, Luke's wife, one of the most requested characters for recanonization, a fan favorite for over 3 decades, still confined to legends. Kyle Katarn, protagonist of the Dark Forces and Jedi Knight game series, gone. The criteria determining what gets extracted and what stays buried remains completely opaque to outside observers. And here's where the comparison gets interesting. The Grisk, introduced in Timothy Zahn's new Canon Thrawn novels, occupy narrative space that some fans speculate mirrors the Yuuzhan Vong's intended role. Unknown regions threat, conquerors requiring galactic-scale response. They operate through manipulation and subjugation, building client species into their war machine. But they're not the Vong, not in any meaningful sense. The Grisk use technology, ships made of metal and circuitry, standard hyperdrives, conventional weapons augmented by clever tactics. The Yuuzhan Vong used biotechnology, living ships that screamed when damaged, weapons grown from engineered organisms, armor that bonded with the wearer's nervous system. The Grisk exist within the Force, detectable through conventional Jedi senses. The Yuuzhan Vong existed outside Force perception entirely, creating a fundamental problem for a galaxy accustomed to relying on precognition and sensing danger before it arrives. The Vong had religious dimension, pain worship as theology. Gods they believed had abandoned them, a culture built around the trauma of their severance. The Grisk are conquerors with strategic goals, different species, different threat. The shared, unknown regions antagonist framing obscures more than it reveals. Will Lucasfilm ever recanonize the Yuuzhan Vong? The invasion was too massive in scope, too intertwined with Legends character arcs, Chewbacca's death, Anakin Solo's sacrifice, Jason's fall, to transplant unchanged into current continuity. But the concept remains narratively potent. Extragalactic invaders, living technology, existence outside conventional Force perception. Some future creator might find a way to reintroduce elements, or they might not. The bureaucratic mess doesn't resolve, it just keeps churning. So back to our question, is Fortnite more canon than the Yuuzhan Vong? Technically, yes. The Palpatine broadcast happened in Fortnite on December 14th, 2019. It was formalized in a novelization 3 months after Episode 9 released. It was depicted in comics 2 years after that. The Lucasfilm story group signed off on all of it. It's official. The New Jedi Order sits in a separate continuity that Lucasfilm acknowledges existed but treats as non-binding. Legends. 19 novels, coordinated across multiple authors from 1999 to 2003. A coherent narrative about a galaxy-shaping invasion. More detailed, more ambitious, more beloved by a certain generation of fans who grew up with it. But not canon. Neither position, Disney bad, nor Legends doesn't count, captures what's actually happening here. Star Wars canon has always been a bureaucratic negotiation between corporate ownership, creative vision, commercial licensing, and audience expectations. It was messy before 2014. It's messy now. The mess just wears different clothes. The holocron still exists. Leland Chi still maintains it. The story group still meets. Elements keep crossing from Legends into canon based on criteria nobody external can identify. Mobile game events are officially part of the continuity. Deleted scenes occupy uncertain ground. The holiday special floats in bureaucratic limbo where nobody will confirm or deny anything. And somewhere in the timeline, Emperor Palpatine announced his return from death to millions of people building forts and shooting each other with cartoon guns. That's Star Wars canon in 2024. Not a clean binary between what counts and what doesn't. A continuing negotiation. A chaos that won't resolve because resolving it would require making decisions that somebody with authority doesn't want to make. Now you know how to read it. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one.